Okay, it's 10:03 according to my watch, and we do have a quorum, so I will call to order the December 15th Peninsula RTPO meeting. What I am not seeing in our audience are any legislators. Am I correct in that? And our first part of our meeting was to discuss our legislative outlook with the legislators. Sarah, did we get any responses at all? You're muted.
Coming there. We had one confirmed no from Representative Simmons. We have two tentatives, but actually from Representatives Chapman and Theringer, and it looked like Representative Chapman was actually not going to be able to make it.
Okay, who was the
I've heard from nobody else.
The confirmed was?
The confirmed negative was Representative Simmons.
Oh, the confirmed negative. It
Right.
wasn't the confirmed positive.
Right, the confirmed decline.
I guess
we have the representative I'm going to allow in right now.
Oh, perfect.
And there's
Representative Theringer.
Hello.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, Representative Theringer.
I can be here for a little bit, but glad to see you.
Okay, then I will quickly, we've already opened our meeting and we were waiting for a representative or a senator to join us, and you are the one. So yes. So what I will do is I will introduce, as I do at the beginning of every meeting, our executive board and you, so that you know who's in attendance. And I do it looking at my Zoom screen. And the first person I see is Ed Coviello. He is an employee of Kitsap Transit and is one of our RTPO coordinators. I am Beck Ashby. I represent the city of Port Orchard, and I am chairing the RTPO. Then I see Dick Taylor, who is a port commissioner with the Port of Shelton. Nicole Gauthier is with Jefferson Transit. Sarah Black is the RTPO coordinator. Leslie Snyder is a city council person from Bainbridge Island. John Clausen is the executive director of Kitsap Transit. Ben Thomas is a city council person from Port Townsend. David Fort is with the transportation department of the county of Kitsap and is representing Kitsap County today. Gary Anderson is a port commission from the Port of Bremerton. Miranda Nash is with Jefferson Transit, and she's our fiscal agent. The next person is Paul Hampton, and his picture isn't there, but Paul represents the city of Forks, and I must say he is very good about attending our meetings. Wendy Clark Getson represents the Jamestown Sklallam tribe. Michael Bateman is with the city of Paulsbo, and he is in the transport and then engineering department. And then I see you, Representative Steve Theringer, and you represent the 24th district. And then we have Mike French, who is a Clallam County commissioner. We have Ed Stern, who is a city of Paulsbo councilman. And we have Randy Netherland, who is a Mason County commissioner. And I see Brendan Meyer, although I don't see him, I see his name, and he is representing Clallam Transit. And George Mazur is with the Olympic Region Department, Washington State Department of Transportation. Did I get everyone? Because my screen was kind of jumping around. Okay, with that, Steve, we will just go over just real quickly. Thera, do you want to put up the slides that we have? We only have 3 brief slides. And this is just a reminder of the geography of the Peninsula RPTO. All 4 counties, Clallam, Jefferson, Kitsap, and Mason County, are members. We have 5 tribes that are members, 4 ports, 9 cities, the 4 transit agencies, and the Olympic region. And we have provided all of our legislators with our outlook, if you want to bring up that slide. And this year, our outlook is, what we wanted to highlight is timely follow through with previous funding commitments. We've had some of our projects in the pipeline for many years, and they have funding commitments, and we're hoping to see those move forward. And a renewed focus on our safety systems. We have a graph there that shows, although crashes have stabilized or flattened out, our fatality crashes have increased. And so we see safety as a very critical issue to our region. The other things that are still on our radar that we would like to discuss is the federal funding swap pilot program that the legislature has approved for us, which we were very excited about. However, the execution of the pilot program has not been as efficient as it could be, and we would like to see it extended to December of 26. We would like to discuss some of the issues with the Hood Canal Bridge or policies that could perhaps be, we know this is beyond us, but we would like some discussion on that. We want to recognize that the Puget Sound to Pacific Trail Coalition received a RAISE grant this year. We're excited about what that is going to bring to our region. We also want to see opportunities to increase the rural EV readiness. We're concerned about the ferry system. The ferry system is very critical to our counties. And Mr. Cern is on the line, and so broadband and getting it, expanding it to the rural areas are also our primary items. I would like to, because we do have folks in the audience that brought these concerns to the RTPO board. Would you like to expand on any of them for Representative Theringer? Where did oh, David, please.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my hand raised thingy.
Okay.
Oh, I would just like to thank that the ferries have been added back into our legislative prioritization. Talking about that, it's very important for Kitsap and also the Olympic Peninsula to have that ferry traffic reliable and as stated in there, back to a minimum what it should be, let alone what it's planned to be as part of that, and that it's very critical. And thank you for adding that back into the document.
Our pleasure. Leslie.
Thank you very much. I just want to share about the RAISE grant, that it is a planning grant, 16 million and change. And so, of course, we want a lot of focus on being able to follow that up with construction dollars. But this is a huge infusion of focus and momentum for the Puget Sound to Pacific infrastructure, and it's also part of the Great American Rail Trail, which goes in across the entire country. Thank you.
Okay. Steve, you're going to, or Mike, you're going to wish Steve had been here. One of the issues that our group has been working on for many years was this federal dollar swap with state money for transportation projects. And the pilot program was released this year. Maybe it was last year, but there's been some inefficiencies and ineffectiveness in that program, and it is impacting our rural counties. So I had hoped to call on, I am going to call on Clallam County. If you could give Representative Theringer just a little background of why that is cumbersome for us now.
Sure. Hi, Steve. Great to see you. If you want to follow up on the technical side of this, either of our deputy public works directors at Clallam County would be great resources. But basically, you know, with federal funding being kind of hard to utilize, what's happened is our county engineers have just gotten very strategic about how they plan and use these funds. And so a one-year pilot program was really just not enough time for them to schedule into their kind of already, in some cases, multi-year planning efforts on how they use the federal funds. And so we still, I think, want to see that swap explored to see if we can get, you know, less restrictions on how we use money and how we program it. But it's going to take a little while for us to figure out the pilot program. And I think that what we would like to see is it extended. And there was also some issues around the guidance came out somewhat late. And so it was just a really short timeline for us to utilize. And I think it's a good idea. And I think it should just be extended. And like I said, if you want some technical stuff on that, either Steve Gray or Joe Denisi at Clallam County would be great resources.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
so
we-
Mike,
Go
do
ahead,
we have to take action as a legislature? What do we need to do? I agree. It seems to be, we need to extend it to have time and see, you know, really make it work. I don't know what the action is that needs to be taken to extend it.
And I'm not that familiar, but I know that I believe it's local programs. DOT has a report due to the legislature December of 24. Is that correct, Sarah? Yeah, and there's just not enough time, as Commissioner French indicated. Our jurisdictions have already programmed those federal funds out and are already have plans for them. I mean, they didn't have time to really look at it and figure out what project would be a good one for the pilot program. Sarah, you had raised your hand.
I wanted to also add that the Association of Washington Cities is leading a big effort on this, Representative Theringer. And so I think they're working on what the actual legislative ask is. So I've been staying in touch with Axel Swanson to stay apprised of what they're doing. And I know that they're bringing something to you. I couldn't tell you exactly what the details are, but they are working just on what the legislative fix is. And that's what it is a fix. So
Great. Thanks for that.
And Sarah, do you want to highlight a little bit about the Hood Canal Bridge and what we could do to prompt some discussions on that?
Sure. This is an example of a regionally significant issue that's bigger than any one of our communities. We understand the Coast Guard has policies governing the opening. The last time those Coast Guard policies were revisited was back in 2012. And we just sort of think that it's worth revisiting. Probably we will need, whether it's a legislative outreach or, and I think we would probably also want to make sure our federal delegation is on board, just to go back and revisit and make sure that the policies, especially for boats that are too large to fit underneath the fixed and the floating spans on the east end of the bridge, that those very large recreational sailboats, that when the bridge opens to let them through, make sure that those policies reflect the impacts that each one of those bridge openings causes, both for traffic congestion as well as on the economies of the communities, basically from Port Angeles to Bremerton, is what I understand, is that they feel that impact. And it's not to say that the bridge should not be opened regularly for extra large sailboats, but making sure that the timing of that and the process by which that occurs is commensurate with the impacts that those openings cause. So, so that what this would do is just try to elevate and find some champions at the state level and at the federal level willing to bring this up with the Coast Guard and just open it up and take a look and see if any updates are warranted.
It's
It's my understanding, if I could, back there, and I think Senator Rolfes sort of led the charge, but it is the Coast Guard, it is maritime, as you know, maritime law from back in the 1700s or whenever sort of overrides local transportation needs. And so it is a kind of a federal issue. But I thought we did get some prohibition on, you know, openings during rush hours and heavy traffic periods. And I think you're right, that needs to be readdressed. And it is, I think everyone on this call is impacted by that. So, it's a little tricky, but involving the federal delegation in this discussion with maybe, uniform letters from all of us, from all the jurisdictions that are impacted, could be a way to move that forward. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. And David already mentioned our reliance on the ferry service, and we realize that is a huge, huge issue, and without probably an easy solution. But we want to make sure it remains on your radar. And I don't know if anyone else, Mr. Clausen, wanted to say anything about this. No, because I know that Kitsap Transit has been helping, at least down here from the Bremerton Run and the Southworth Run, get some passengers to Seattle. So there.
I guess, Beck, maybe I will just mention, I believe it's in the governor's budget that the Washington State Ferries has requested some additional funding to continue that supplemental service that we're operating to help fill in some of those missed trips on Bremerton. So I just want to make you aware of that it's in the governor's budget request currently.
Okay, thank you. And that gives some relief to the passenger riders. It doesn't give any relief to the vehicle riders. Mr. French.
Yeah, of course, this is, somewhat obvious, but a lot of our local transportation connections are reliant on that ferry service. The straight shot in Port Angeles and Clallam Transit, I think, has been one of our best local transit ideas in the last decade. It relies on that ferry service to really be effective. And so it's a really important thing for us.
And the Hood Canal Bridge is part of that trip too, isn't it?
Yeah, how do people like living on peninsulas? How's that working out? No, there's I think a ferry caucus meeting this afternoon, and it is a real challenge. John from Kitsap, I know you guys run you run a passenger ferry out of Kitsap, right? Out of Kingston. Is that you, or is that a private system? And do you know how successful that is?
We do. We operate passenger ferries from Kingston, Bremerton, and Southworth and South Kitsap all the way to downtown Seattle. And it's doing quite well. Just as a piece of information, I had an opportunity to talk with Patty at WSF here a couple of weeks ago and offered that that's one of the routes that they're also having challenges with, and recognizing that it's not a major route for walk-ons, but it would be relatively easy for us to supplement some of their missed trips as well between Kingston and Edmonds outside of our commute hours that we operate. So that's just another option that I presented to Patty that she might explore. But again, it's going to have to be funded by the state to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think just in general, as you folks probably all know, this is complicated because of boat maintenance, and seems like there's always boats breaking down. There's staffing issues that complicate this. As you know, the Coast Guard has requirements about how many folks can be on a boat to make it run safely, and moving that staff around. It's quite a multi-dimensional puzzle. I think a lot of it was catalyzed by the pandemic and staffing issues that were impacted by the pandemic. I think it always seems when it looks like it's getting a little better and a little more dependable, so something else breaks or someone else gets sick or whatever. And as folks may know, we missed a cycle of new boat construction because I think it was 4 years ago, maybe, when we had the transportation package, we had language that required the boats to be built in Washington. As it turns out, no one bid on those construction. So we went out this year to broaden that to the nation. And I think there's even some international participations possible. So we lost a couple, 3 years in, construction, and obviously it takes a couple, 3 years to build the boat. So there's just a lot of pieces that have added to this challenge.
We certainly
Nicole.
recognize that on our side as well. You know, boats, they're a piece of machinery, they're going to break. Some of the ages of their fleet it makes it challenging to even get parts for the boats. So appreciate that.
I mean, it's great, John, that you guys have stepped up with that passenger. I have yet to take that from Kitsap to Kingston to Seattle, but I think it's making more and more sense these days. So
Exactly. Thank you, Nicole.
I just wanted to add on to what Mike French said, and also John Clausen. Jefferson Transit has runs that go between Port Townsend and Kingston, where the majority of our riders are either hopping on Kitsap's Fast Ferry to Seattle or on the Edmonds Ferry to Edmonds. But we also operate runs to Paulsbo, where we then connect with Kitsap Transit to ferry service in Bainbridge. And that's a big part of the movement of folks around the peninsula is operating that service. So we are relying on being able to cross the Hood Canal Bridge, but also on the ferries as well.
and if I could, back to, do you have a sense, Nicole, of your ridership, sort of the numbers and sort of the trends, the increases?
Yeah, I don't have my ridership numbers in front of me, but our Paulsbo, especially the commuter times in the morning and in the evenings, we're looking at some of our higher ridership there. Also, our Kingston Express service, which we launched in 2022, it hasn't been out on the road for too long, but we've had school groups use that run to help offset the cost of field trips. In the summer, we changed our schedule to mimic what Kitsap's schedule was. So we now have a summer schedule, which lines up better. And really, it's helpful for folks who want to come onto the peninsula and not bring their car. So we're looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, much like what Holland Transit is doing with the Straight Shot, which is a great service. It allows people to get from Seattle, the Seattle area, onto the peninsula without bringing their vehicle, which is so important.
Yeah, no, that's great. And there is money, I think, in the governor's budget, right? And there has been from the Climate Commitment Act for rural transit enhancement. And these are the types of things I think that would be just perfect for the reasons you've cited, Nicole, for that funding. If scheduling, say adding another run or something like that, or would be, I think that money should be available for that. And I assume you guys are tracking that better than I am, probably.
Yep, we are.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to put someone on the spot again. Mr. Anderson, are you there? I don't see your face. I just see your name. But I wondered if you had anything on behalf of the ports that you would like to either compliment Representative Theringer on or let him know some of your challenges.
Well, thank you, Beck, for asking the question. We're always mindful at the port, because we have an airport and some other expansion plans that we're talking about for the future, just what our transportation challenges will be to allow that development to occur. And specifically, it'll be on Highway 3 that transfers from Gorst to Belfair and serves that whole area. So that's a probably primary concern to us. And of course, the Gorst problem is already been addressed and it's moving forward. And thankfully, we do have great support from the state and from the federal government to allow that to be addressed. We'll see some results from that in the next couple of years as they do their planning process. But I guess just to answer your question, Beck, it would be mostly Highway 3 and because of the amount of development that is being considered and planned, both industrial and residential in Kitsap County and Belfair, that's a primary concern.
And Representative Theringer, I will also mention that the Port of Bremerton received recognition as being the best port in the state this year. Did I get your accolades right?
You got it right. Thank you.
Yeah. So they've been doing some very, very good work out at the Port of Bremerton.
Wow, I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that safety was our primary focus this year. Is there anyone in our group that wanted to speak to the issue of safety? I know that some of the projects that we had on our, that had been funded but had been put out far on the timeline, when they were addressed and looked at from a safety point of view, we were able to get them back on track in a more timely way. And I believe we still have some fairly aged projects waiting for completion that if we were to look at them from a safety standpoint, may be able to move forward. Wendy, do you have something on the tribes or just in general?
It falls into the category of in general that there's outstanding safety projects on Highway 104 that I know Representative Steve Theringer is very aware of, that are the entrance points into the Quimper Peninsula. And we know that it seems like with every season or every year that those projects are delayed, we continue to see safety impacts that cannot be restored with human lives. So yeah, we're in full support of those DOT projects that enter our PRTPO RTIP, and we hope that we can see more safety projects in the future.
Yeah, it's my understanding that those, the roundabout at Shine there and then the one at 19 are scheduled for construction this summer. If you guys may have some different data, but they were put off for a while for engineering and I think some public comment, but my understanding is they're scheduled to move forward. And the engineers of course hope that those will provide throughput for the traffic, but also more safety there.
Randy, did you want to comment on safety issues?
Yeah, Representative, thank you again just for even being here and spending your time with us. The only thing I would add is I stepped in to try and shift things towards safety after meeting with the Secretary of Transportation for the governor. And we end up, he did an incredible job. He sat there with me for 2.5 hours as we explained the safety aspects of the Highway 3 freight corridor change and everything that was needed there. And that's when we started realizing that there was a shift that we didn't notice that went from economic development to safety. And I think we were able to explain that and to capitalize on that. Right now, I know for our project, we're back online again. Things are going back again. And I thank you very much for helping us to make all that happen because it wouldn't have happened without you. But it's going well. And just remembering that although we sell things as economic development, quite often we sell it that way because that's the flavor of the day. But then it shifts back to safety and remembering that all of us have lost people that we know at some of these intersections. Like for myself, where it's going to be connecting up there in Kitsap County. I used to be a firm believer of trying to have that entrance on the freight corridor in Mason County, but we just lost too many lives and I had to go away from my own economic development desires for my community into the safety of everybody that's around us. So I appreciate you guys standing behind us and helping get our projects back on there and back on track. So that's the only thing I'll add on the safety aspect. Thank you very much, Representative.
Representative Theringer, is there anything that you would like to share with us and how can we help you? And is there any additional information we could get to you?
Hey, Beck, I just wanted to pop in here real quick. This is Brendan Meyer. My council colleague isn't on the call today, Lindsay Schwarm-Warren. So just wanted to take the opportunity for State Road 117, the truck route. US 101 interchange improvements when we were talking about safety. Just to bring that to attention, it's, you know, securing some funding for that. Right now, it's sort of a nightmare situation to get trucks going out using that route. So that, you know, to have some funding go towards that would be wonderful. And since Lindsay's not here, I just wanted to bring it up.
Right, and
Thanks,
Lindsay,
Steve.
Lindsay did send his apologies. He had another meeting that extended and overlapped, so we're expecting him anytime. Randy, you have something else?
Yeah, on a different note, other than the safety aspect, but it does work together on it. Representative, every year I bring up the idea that sometimes we have items that may not be exact with the state on importance, but that's nothing new. But I've always brought forward the idea, and I'm going to ask you again to consider putting together any type of granting or teamwork proposal that if the county, city, or port or any other entity decides to put up a larger share of the money, that it can help move things along forward and move them higher on the list. For example, I have accidents on Johns Prairie Road on Highway 3 down here. My county has been putting away money for infrastructure, specifically for roads and roads of economic development and such. If we were to show that we're willing to pay more than the 25%, maybe we can move things up a ladder if we had a program that was set up that way, that if they're willing to do 50, that its importance level rises up. Just something please to consider for the future, because when that does happen, some of these counties do have roads that they'd rather have taken care of, and they have been putting money aside, but they just can't do it alone.
Yeah, as folks know, the transportation budget at the state level is underwater. They're looking at, you know, canceling or suspending a number of very large projects. And it's partly, you know, there's just supply chain issues, there's labor issues, and so there's cost inflation, and they're not getting the bids. They're not getting competitive bids because everyone's busy. And so the last biennium we used, or maybe it was 2 years ago, we used both capital budget and operating budget to help backfill gaps for the transportation package. So it's very difficult. And there's going to be an even less, there's going to be less dollars available for some of these projects, Randy. So it's just kind of the nature of where we are. Hopefully that'll ease up a little bit, but I know that Chairman Five in the House he and I talk about this, and he's, you know, be honest, he's sniffing around my budget looking for money to do some transportation stuff, which let's say I'm not completely in favor of. I mean, we helped out once before. We certainly have needs, but it's of the state's budgets, you know, operating capital and transportation, that is the one that is really most challenged right now for a number of reasons. We look at the ferries, we look at just, you know, availability of concrete and laborers. I mean, part of it is, you know, Sound Transit is taking up a lot of the air in the I-5 corridor, and a number of those major projects like 520, I think, are going to have to be suspended because they've, you know, the bid is double what was originally proposed. So I'm glad that the Gorse situation is in the budget, is moving forward. That's been on the list for a long time. But it's going to be hard to get new projects. Certainly, I don't think there's going to be any additional projects added to the budget this cycle. And then, you know, next year for the biennial budget is when you might see some opportunity again.
I plan on not asking for anything this time around.
And that's a very smart position to be in.
But if you just consider in the future, if there is money that's available, if you were to set it up with a situation where there's a hierarchy with how much county, city, or other entities willing to kick in for themselves, that it might raise the project, that might it makes the money go further if somebody's willing to pay, 50% instead of 25%.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, I agree. I agree. Incentivize good behavior.
Mhm.
The other thing that I want is just using money efficiently, and that's kind of the impetus for the federal funds swap, is because when our jurisdictions are using the federal dollars, it's costing them more to use that than it should. I also am, I won't articulate this well, but I also just want to point out that many of our jurisdictions are quite small. And we heard at our last meeting from Mr. Hampton from Forks of how hard it is for a jurisdiction of his size to utilize any of the grants and know when grants are available. Again, to me, it came down to efficiency. And I know for him, it would probably be much easier to use state money than federal money. I'm trying to plead your case, Paul, but I'm not sure exactly what I'm asking for. But he wears many hats out there, and they don't necessarily have, in the course of the day or the month to do some of the details that need to be done to stay on top of all these things. We as an RTPO are trying to figure out how to get information to him so that they're to our jurisdiction so that they would know when particular grants are available and what may be beneficial for their use. But it is an issue for some of our smaller jurisdictions, is just having the capacity to use the money. And we hate to see it go other places when we really need it and could use it. I also saw that Monty joined us. Monty, we've already kind of had a discussion on the federal swap. Is there anything else that you would like to bring up? He's representing Jefferson County. If Monty's there.
Yeah, sorry, they swapped out my computer yesterday, so it took me a while to get onto this meeting because it's a whole new world for me here. But certainly Jefferson County has always been a big promoter of the federal swap, and the issue with the 1 year program was that it was for 1 year, and we're programmed out 3 or 4 years. And like our next project where we're using federal STPG funds we're borrowing ahead 3 years, but we can't do that with the fund swap program. So it doesn't really do us any good because of the use it or lose it policies. We really have to be out ahead by, several years to make sure we don't end up in a position where we have a year where we can't meet our target spending. So again, just, would love to see the program continue, but really needs to be out there for a few years ahead of us, not just 1 year at a time. And it would be a huge help, again, because we're using small amounts of federal money to leverage large amounts of state money, but that small amount of federal money really, brings with it all the federal requirements that are the challenge to implement on smaller projects and not efficient to implement on smaller projects.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And I know you guys, I think Clallam's kind of leading the charge on this for the last, decade, and other states are doing it. And I think the fact that, we've gotten, I see DOT's on here, but they're, not open to it. And we just need a little more time to execute it. So, I think it makes a ton of sense. And so hopefully an AWC will be a good advocate. So I would suspect we'll be able to extend it. So.
Well, and just because I know it's a project that, is one you're really familiar with. I mean, we're trying to add another 2 miles, 3 miles to the Olympic Discovery Trail. We're nearly through the planning and permitting process. Much of that project is funded through RCO funds, but the match for RCO is coming from SDPG federal. So that small match has federalized that project. And now we're trying to certify right away where you have RCO has a policy you can't use eminent domain, condemn for trail right away, and DOT basically has the opposite policy that you must, or that there really isn't a chapter on willing seller acquisitions in the DOT right-of-way book. So, this is just an example of where federalizing a project really complicates it. But that $1 million a match is the difference. A federal match is the difference between us being able to use, millions of dollars of RCO funds or not. So, if we had the Fed, and we're using 3 years of our $400,000 a year SDP countywide allocation to create that match, but see, we can't use the swap program because we need 3 years of out ahead of our allocation. So
Monty, if the swap was extended and not just limited to this year, say it was extended indefinitely, then that would work for you.
yes. And we would take advantage of it at the 90 cents on the dollar, definitely. And I think DOT local programs would appreciate it too, because it would eliminate a bunch of their oversight and work that they have to do, on a project like this.
Yeah, no, I think as Beck said, this is the key is if the dollars are harder to come by, we need to be more efficient with the dollars we have. I mean, that's not rocket science. It's just the bureaucracy gets in the way. So I don't, I've not heard whether there's any opposition to this extension, but I would suspect it would be good to have sort of an indefinite extension and, or at least a 10-year extension. And then you could come back and see if the project, if the policy is working well or not.
Yes. And we know it's worked really well in Oregon. I mean, they do it differently down there, but it's a good example. So,
yeah, good.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that conversation. I believe Mr. Hampton was going to speak, and I didn't get to him in time. Did you want to say something, Paul?
I was just going to say thank you for recognizing the City of Forks. Yeah, it is difficult because we don't have multi-million-dollar budgets to pay grant writers and engineers and stuff to go after these types of money. So it's really difficult for us to small town. It seems kind of weird to be up against, ferries and big, huge projects, and we're just trying to get a neighborhood paved.
No, it's a real issue for you, and we should be able, the RTPO should be able to offer you some support of some type on that. We will work on that. I also see that Commissioner Rolfes from Kitsap County has joined us. Did you have any particular transportation things you wanted to discuss with Representative Theringer?
Sure. Is everybody going around and asking?
Well, no, we've kind of gone through our focus points, and I was just inviting people to chat.
Steve, nice to see you. Thank you for coming to this meeting. You're it, I guess.
I guess it's nice to see you, Christine.
Yeah.
You look so much more relaxed because you're not in the hot seat for the state budget.
Pretty nice life, yeah. The only project that I would bring up is across the Hood Canal Bridge from the 24th. So I don't know that it's appropriate to ask Steve to lead on it, but we really need to resurrect the Highway 3 backup problem that goes from the bridge down to Paulsbo on a summer day. And so I've been David Fort's been helped me out, but we dug up some of the old studies and stuff, and I really want to resurrect that conversation and see if we can get attention paid to it. So to be continued, but thank you for letting me voice that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and you were the lead on that when we did it before, so I'm glad that you're involved, and certainly I think all of us, on the 23rd and the 24th delegations will help on that. So just let us know when we need to plug in and what we need to do. But yeah, it's a challenge, and as I think what you did last time was try to address the scheduling a little bit so it didn't impact heavy traffic times. But
yeah, we're going to make another run at that. So we're hoping everybody will sign on to a letter to the Coast Guard requesting morning hours to have some closure restriction or opening restrictions. But specifically, I want to resurrect the idea of either a holding lot or a holding lane on the Kitsap County side, because just traffic just stops and nobody can get anywhere.
yeah, whatever. I again really appreciate your leadership, and we'll help in any way we can.
Monty and then Ed.
Well, thanks. I would just say that the project just mentioned on the east side of Hood Canal Bridge is probably the highest priority transportation project for Jefferson County, and ought to be for Clallam County as well, even though it's not in our counties, just because that's how everyone gets on and off the peninsula, and that really drives the economy, and it's a real problem. I mean, there's 5-mile backups on that regularly in the summertime, both ways on the weekends, and it's just a huge problem. That I mean, you know, the ferry brings 64 cars at most every hour and a half to Port Townsend. The bridge is bringing, 18,000, 20,000 a day. It's huge. Our other priority, and since I got on late here, is just we're resurrecting the SR 1920 corridor from Chimacum up to Port Townsend, working with the port, city, and other partners. We want to bring that project forward. But again, I think the backups on the in Kitsap County getting onto the peninsula are just about the highest transportation priority for Jefferson County and probably Clallam County as well. So we're highly supportive of efforts to fix that issue.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to pivot on transportation for the peninsulas and talk multimodal in the form of broadband representative. I just came out of a meeting in Olympia this morning, State Broadband Office, CURB, and Public Works Board. And in front of the $1.2 billion in federal BEAD broadband money that's coming down, we're not only the escalation due to inflation on trying to build this infrastructure out, and it's so important on the peninsulas, but we just saw the example of the Port of Clarkston being held captive to the utility pole attachments. The costs escalated some 5 times from $65,000 to $225,000 just to touch the poles to string the broadband on the fiber. And if we experience that kind of monopolistic pricing statewide, we're going to have a lot of our federal and state broadband money eaten up. And so I don't know what can be done there, but that is a huge emerging issue in front of the BEAD program.
Yeah, I'm glad you were at the meeting, and it is interesting that all of a sudden that space on those poles has become incredibly valuable. There's even some talk about the poles are too small, so they want you to come in and put in entirely new poles. Actually, I think it's DOT that has that requirement of a certain height, and I know there's been discussion around trying to waive that because the poles are actually in pretty good shape. And yeah, it's interesting how these issues pop up when you sort of unrealized until you start, trying to execute the project.
Yeah. Thank you.
Randy.
Christine, don't forget to include Mason County in your letter and your request. You've been an incredible supporter and friend of us, and that will never be forgotten. Your issue is our issue. So please include us and let us join on to help.
And I see that Lindsay has joined us. You've missed most of the discussion, and we understand, and that's fine. But is there anything in particular that you wanted to bring to Representative Theringer's attention, or compliments? Or we've discussed the bridge, we've discussed ferries, we haven't discussed EV infrastructure. We've discussed the federal swap. We have discussed the importance of moving some of our aged, or should we say mature projects, transportation projects forward, because they are truly safety issues for us. Is there anything else that you would like to bring to Representative Theringer's attention?
No, but I'll be the first to thank Representative Theringer for taking the time to be with us and prioritize these issues at this time. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm looking to see if anyone else has any comments or anything to offer. Representative Theringer, do you have anything? Again, we appreciate your attendance greatly this morning. We really do.
No, just that, you know, I mean, organizations like the PRTPO are really helpful for us, because you know, you have a broad representation from small cities, large cities, the ferries, the transit organizations, and you do a lot of the work of sort of distilling out the priorities, which is really helpful for us. And that coalition is then helpful for us as we try to move issues forward, like on the Hood Canal Bridge and safety on, you know, the 104 corridor. And as was talked about, there's dollars available for some of these, you know, enhancements, whether it's rural transit or EV charging, or, you know, transitioning on, you know, to better transportation systems. So your work of making each other aware of what funding is out there and then prioritizing what your needs are is really, really helpful. It is a challenging time, as I mentioned, for transportation budgets per se. So looking at other buckets of funding, I think is important. And hopefully this will flatten a little bit, and, you know, the construction environment will loosen up a little bit. But right now it's really supply chain and contractors have control over a lot of what's going on. I mean, they're, as you folks probably know, I mean, they're just placing bids that are 30-40%, you know, and if they get it, fine. If they don't get it, fine, because they're so busy. So the bidding environment is really challenging right now. But again, thanks for your work and for, you know, providing this process for prioritization. It's really helpful.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Representative, for taking the time to join us. It's always important to give us an opportunity to exchange from both your perspective as well as ours. So I just wanted to thank you.
Great. I'm going to ride one of your ferries one of these days, John, from that one from Kingston to Seattle. Go see
Let
hockey.
me know and I'll come join you.
Yeah.
Ben?
Just to say thanks to Steve again. We're pretty much neighbors, so I'll be able to see him walking down the street sometime. But I'm in his district and he's in mine. So, yeah, thanks for being on this.
Yeah, glad. I thought I would spend a half hour, and here it's been an hour, so that's good.
Yeah, you took your chances and look what happened.
I did. There's probably something else I missed, but that's okay.
No, we do really appreciate your time. And I also just want to acknowledge our membership and how they really do have partnerships among them and work very collaboratively together. As we heard this morning from Jefferson Transit and Column Transit, and how they meet up with Kitsap Transit and on both the bus service and the ferry service, and the work that we have done together to help with the federal swap. I just want to acknowledge our group, because they do a lot of work. And we try to give it to you. We try to educate you what the challenges we see on the ground are. And we don't always want to ask you for money. We just want to say, how can we use it more efficiently and understand some of our transportation challenges. So again, I appreciate your time very much. Appreciate
it. No, it was good for me. It was edifying for me to hear what you guys are working on. And we've got a couple of things that we need to team up on through the session, like the swap for sure, make sure that's extended for a larger period of time. And so, no, it was time well spent. So thank you for having me, and everybody enjoy your holidays.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to your session.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of our business meeting if you would like.
Well, I do have some other things. So, but again,
or you can enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, I've got a couple other things I need to do, but thank you very much. Thanks for the conversation. Bye-bye.
Okay, with that, thank you for your input and your engagement this morning. I thought that went well. And we will move on down. I think we're just about on time. We will move on down our regular agenda. And the first thing we'd like to do is approve the agenda for today. Is there someone who would make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dick. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Ed. It has been moved and seconded to approve our agenda. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? If not, the agenda is approved with unanimous consent. We also have our consent calendar, which is the minutes from our October meeting, our first quarter invoice, and our legal services contract with Kitsap Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Is there anyone who would like to move any of those things off the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda calendar.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a second?
I would like to second it.
Thank you, Wendy. It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion to approve the consent calendar? Hearing none, the consent calendar is approved with unanimous consent. Okay, our next item is a debrief of the session we just had with Representative Theringer. I thought it went well. Is there anyone who would like to offer some comments on the session? I was very glad that he came. It was nice to have one here. And it was nice to have him engage with us. Let's all think about that. And as Wendy, please.
I just wanted to compliment that we were very well prepared, and I really liked the way we got into the issues so that we took full advantage of Representative Theringer's time, especially when we focused on the section that we called the on our radar. I think that was where most of the conversation was led from, and the extras were nice as well.
I know we had a discussion a couple months ago because it's always a challenge to get our legislators' calendars and our calendars to coincide. And we had thought having this session with our December meeting made a lot of sense because we would all be here anyway. And so maybe we can take that format and just improve on it a little bit and maybe make sure it's on calendars earlier, let them know right away at the start of the year that this is what our intent is, and hopefully we can have more join us. However, it does become quite intimate. I think there's been, maybe last year, Mike Chapman was the only one here, and we had a very engaging conversation with him at the time.
I seem to remember, Beck, like when I showed up as a legislator, it was always just me and then somebody from the peninsula. We've never been able to garner all 12, like a majority of the 12 at these meetings. So we might want to talk about how to get
right.
them
And maybe
in.
engage you in that, because you've been on both sides of that coin, and how can we, because we want to use their time efficiently, as well as ours. Okay. Moving on down the agenda, Sarah, do you want to take the launch of the transportation alternatives call for projects?
Yes, thank you. The Transportation Alternatives program, federal funding program. Let me just make sure I see Ed. Is there something that at the beginning of this tap?
Oh, Ed, yes.
Yeah, Wendy had her hand up, so I don't know
I'm
whether she.
sorry. Okay,
I think Indy.
Oh, okay.
Wendy hadn't taken her hand down.
Okay, I just want to make sure there didn't need to do something before this got started. Okay, so Transportation Alternatives Federal Funding Program, PRTPO, is responsible for identifying funding priorities to be awarded funding. This is a program that is probably most widely recognized as something that tends to fund bicycle, pedestrian, complete streets projects, safe routes to school, but also does some environmental mitigation, my favorite, control and removal of outdoor advertising, and a variety of other things. It's really quite a wide range of projects that can be funded. I came to you in October to let you know that the TAC had recommended that PRTPO launch the call for projects in 2024. And so I'm coming back to you with their sort of recommended approach to doing this. What you have attached to your agenda is sort of the draft materials that would support this process. It includes a guide as well as an application form. I called out in the staff briefing just a few highlights that we didn't talk about in detail or that have changed since we talked about it in October. First is that the amount to be awarded as it comes to you, as based on the discussion with the TAC, would be about $2 million, 2.016 million, I believe it is, to be exact. And what this, why this is a larger amount is that what this would do is program all the way through the next 4 years. So it was that point that Monty was talking about earlier with federal funding, with such small pots of money. If we program ahead, it makes there be enough money to make it worthwhile to put federal funding on a project. So the TAC thought that made sense, and what this will do is fully program out this next year's STIP when that goes forward. So 2 million is a better amount to work with than 1.4 million. The schedule, what this proposes is that as soon as possible after today's meeting, so I'm going to say by next Wednesday, but maybe earlier, we would have the call for projects out on the streets, and then the process would close on March 4th. And so that gives applicants 11 weeks, and I know that it includes the holidays, but it's a pretty simple process, and it's 11 weeks, and we'll just go ahead and get it on everybody's radar at that point. This process enables projects to come in and request 100% federal funding. This is something new from the last time that you all awarded Transportation Alternatives Program funding. There's both an upside to that and a downside to that. The upside to that is that it eliminates local match as being a barrier to participating in this program. What local programs heard is that sometimes that 13.5% match is too much for some of these projects. The downside is that if you were to fund this whole pot of money at 100% federal funding, it won't go as far. That was to Randy's point earlier, that more match stretches the pot further. This process does not preclude projects from requesting 100% federal funding. It is just a factor that will be incorporated in when the projects are being evaluated and prioritized. So it's an option, and some may choose to use it and some may not, but it won't be a disqualifier. This process, for the first time, will explicitly address equity, and that is a requirement of the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed by Congress. And so this process must take into consideration the location of projects and their impacts on vulnerable communities. And so we are proposing to do this with a sort of a two-pronged approach. The first of which, I will tell you right up front, we're just taking advantage of an existing situation, which is that Kitsap County partners do not participate in PRTPO's transportation alternatives process. They participate in PSRCs, which has much, much more money. And that is the urban county in this 4-county region. And so this process sort of says only rural counties can participate. And so I know that that's a little disingenuous, but we're taking advantage of a situation, and then that helps WashDOT on their end say, this region used rural location as a factor. But more significantly, more meaningfully, is that within the application, there's applicants will now speak to any affected populations that might be near their project, and this typically coincides with our human services transportation populations, which are what the feds recognize in this, are age, income, and disability as being, and rural, as being sort of their 4 sort of target populations. And so applicants will be asked to speak to how their project may or may not affect these populations or provide benefits to them. They are also going to provide us with geo coordinates for their project locations, and we're going to map that to the equity, an equity mapping tool that the Department of Health manages for Washington State, so that we can see, the reviewers, you all can see, everybody can see which projects are located in some of the most, I'm describing them as mobility insecure census tracts, those populations that are perhaps most vulnerable to not being able to get around because of their age, income, or disability. So that will be, again, another factor. It's not an overriding factor in this process, but it is something else that the reviewers will evaluate. Finally, project ranking will come to you. The TAC will take this process first and develop, go through every proposal in very fine detail and develop a recommended funding priority array that we will then bring to the executive board for your review, evaluation, and final action. And at that point, you will receive their recommendation, and this will be in April. You will be able to make adjustments if needed based on your review of this. And then we would do project selection at that point. Projects would go into the tips that are being developed at the local agencies at that time, and then we'll just move right on. And then you'll do this again in 4 years. So that's my very quick thumbnail overview of this. And what I would be looking for today is to answer any questions that you might have, and then your approval to launch the 2024 Transportation Alternatives Call for Projects. Thank you.
A question I have, Sarah, is I remember that we had a committee do the evaluations and not the TAC membership. Is that a change? Or am I?
We use the committee for the consolidated grants. We use the TAC for transportation alternatives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I looked at the material, I thought, I'm glad I'm not a grant writer. Are there any concerns or questions about the process? Are we inclined to move forward with the call for projects and taking this out to 2028? That's kind of the question, is do we want to go out that far? And the reason for going out that far is we only get, it's about $400,000 a year. And when we're dividing it among all of our jurisdictions, that doesn't go very far. So if we take it out 4 years, we will have about $2 million to award. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the call for transportation alternatives program funding.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any comments, concerns, questions? Okay. Are we going to have the little videos again that we can look at?
The TAC felt that the videos really did not add
Were
much
not
to
useful.
deep
Okay.
evaluation.
Okay.
And also the applicants don't really like doing them. So. But they're welcome to provide if they would like. I keep thinking somebody's going to do a TikTok video or something of their project and be really fun, but so far nobody's taken that bait.
Okay. Okay. I know that we used that during the COVID years. So there is a motion on the floor to approve the call for projects for the Transportation Alternatives Program funding. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved with unanimous consent. Okay. Our next agenda item is going to open up, I believe, a lot of, I don't know if it's going to open up a lot of discussion today. It may, but I know it will in the future as we get more in depth in it. Thera, do you want to introduce our seeking a support for a statewide increase in the base program for the state funding for the RTPOs?
Sure, thank you. We're going to be talking about how the program, this work program is funded and efforts underway to increase that base funding. And I realize we're having this conversation right after Representative Theringer said the transportation budget's underwater. So I realize that, but it's still an important conversation that needs to happen, and you need to be aware of what's going on. So Washington State created RTPOs back in 1990. They came about as a part of the Growth Management Act, and they're funded by the legislature. The legislature developed a sort of a funding formula, and WashDOT is sort of responsible for administering those funds. And so over the last 30 years probably since the first budget, the RTPOs receive a base program funding from the state to conduct the requirements that are laid out in RCW 4780. It's basically, what you do as an organization and your requirements and what you need to pay attention to and be involved in. Those dollars have not increased very much. Some part of that pot is allocated based on the number of counties that are in an RTPO. And remember, the entire state is divvied up into RTPOs. So some part of that pot is divvied up based on the number of counties that are in an RTPO, and some amount of it is based on population, and then some amount based on other things. But those two factors are established in state law. And so what has happened over the years is that responsibilities have increased for RTPOs, as well as there are now 2 more RTPOs than there were when these funds were very first, sort of allocated for the process. And they don't increase. And so PRTPO has, like RTPOs all across the state, has been operating on about the same amount of money as it was in 2004. And so if you can imagine in your own government budgets, back in your own individual jurisdictions, if you were trying to run the programs that you're running today on what you had in 2004, there would be some difficult decisions being made. And so what has happened over the years is that for the large RTPOs, the metropolitan planning organizations like PSRC, Thurston Regional Planning Council, Spokane, Vancouver, Whatcom, they receive funding directly from FHWA and FTA for planning. So they have a federal responsibility and they get money from the feds to do that. What they've been doing since the late 1990s is subsidizing the fact that they don't have enough RTPO funding with those federal funds, because what they're required to do by the state and by the feds are very similar, and they've been subsidizing that for decades. rural RTPOs like PRTPO, like Island, like OCOG, like Quadco, they don't get those federal funds. And so what they've done over the years, what you have done over the years, is every year you tighten your belt a little bit more and a little bit more. And rural RTPOs have just been functioning within their means. And that is fine until like you need to replace staff or take on a project or do a value add. So that has caused a lot of RTPOs across the state to say we've asked WashDOT to help us get more money in the past. And WashDOT's got other issues to deal with. This is not its highest priority. So what's underway right now is that all those RTPOs have gathered together, or are gathering together, and I'm coming to you to see if you want to gather with them. They are gathering together to make a concerted pitch to the legislature to request an increase in the base program funding to support coordinated regional transportation planning across the state. Today, all 17 RTPOs operate off of a total of 4.9 million. And of that, PRTPO gets about 274,000, or a little less than that every biennium. So you are operating on less than $137,000 a year. You're doing everything that you do on less than that. And when it gets down to, there's certain costs that are fixed. Like every organization, you've got your fixed costs and you take care of all those fixed costs. And then what's left is what's available actually for staffing to do either what I do with you or what Ed does, Miranda's work as fiscal agent. So in the future, this is really going to matter, because what you can and cannot do with your work program, or who you can hire to fulfill this work for you, is going to depend upon how much money you have. So that's all this big complicated background. As Beck said, this is a first conversation of what will be many, but what I'm coming to you today is to let you know that there is this concerted effort to increase the base program funding. We don't know how much extra PRTPO would get if the request were successful, if there was $12 million every biennium to support regional planning, and if it were distributed the way it is today, PRTPO might have $330,000, $350,000 every year to do planning. That opens up opportunities you've never even considered, because why would you? So what we want to do today is open up this conversation, see if PRTPO would be interested in joining into this coordinated effort to increase funding. And and then this is going to open up there will be conversations coming in the future about staffing, contracting, maintaining a sustainable regional work program. And all of that will get back to how much money does PRTPO even have to function? So is that, hopefully, Beck, I know that was kind of long and it's very big, a lot of dimensions to it, but I'm going to turn it back to you for.
Right, and this has been, Sarah brought a letter to me, maybe mid-October or November. Originally, the RTPO group was writing one letter, wanting all of the chairs to sign it. And of course, I won't sign anything without your approval. So I said, we can't do that. I said, but we could discuss it with our board and we can do something in December. And then, of course, I'm the recovering banker, so I wanted to know where they came up with the dollar amount they were asking for. And then I realized that whatever they're asking for is probably not what they're going to get. And when would they get it? Would it be in this biennium? Probably not. It's probably going to be in the future. And so I decided not to worry so much about how we were going to spend the money. It was just seeing if we could get additional money. What we are doing, even things like our GIS system that we use, actually quite well if you go to our website. We have to pay for that every year. And when we pay for that, last year we got additional funds, and we have managed to have a contract now that extends this out a year and a half or so. but it's really hard to find that money within our budget. That is why we went out and sought additional monies for it before. I have concerns that just keeping up, I think Thera operates now on like 0.3 of an FTE. And that is not enough to sustain us in the future. So the letter that's before you today is fairly generic, explaining that the RTPOs have not had additional money for several years. We've been asked to do additional reports, to do additional work with DOT, all of which we're obligated to do under 4780, but we're not giving any money to do that with. And it's getting very difficult for us to meet our obligations. And we will just have to figure out how to do it in the future if there is not additional money to do that. The question today is, does this group want to write this letter or modify this letter that we would then take to our legislators and talk to them about? I felt badly that we knew this was coming forward, but we couldn't bring it up with Representative Theringer because we had not discussed it with our board. It was a completely new idea to our board. And so we will have to, if the board wants us to move forward with this letter, we will have to figure out how to present it to our legislators. Randy?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I heard Representative Theringer, and I appreciate everything he's saying, and I believe him. But I've learned one thing in life: if you don't have a pole in the water, you're not going to catch a fish. And sometimes you put this stuff out there, and it's the next year or the year after that it actually gets a better look. But I believe, I don't know that this is the proper structure to do it, but I definitely believe we have to put a pole in the water, at least try to move forward with what we're doing. This is definitely not going to be sustainable in the long term. Although Thera has done an incredible job, we have to find.
Thank you. And I don't know if all of you heard clearly, but a meeting or so ago, Thera did imply to us that she has retirement on the horizon. Now, I'm not sure if that horizon is 2, 3, or 5 years from now, but she does have retirement on the horizon. And so we will be needing to, she does an enormous job for us without a significant compensation. So again, we turned the conversation back to, do we want to support this letter? Any more thoughts or comments?
I move to direct the chair to sign the statewide increasing base program funding letter for PRTPOs.
Second that.
Okay. Is there discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, it has been moved and seconded to approve the chair to sign a letter to our legislators supporting an increase in funding for the RTPOs. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time, is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. Thank you. Lindsay? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Is this ripe enough that we should put it on our own jurisdiction's legislative agendas if those are still in formation?
I would hope so.
If I could, Beck, if I could add in, and I want to believe that you are all at this table because PRTPO adds value in some way for you. And so I think it's really important for legislators, as well as maybe like the Association of Washington Cities or Washington Association of Counties, to hear that you value what comes from this collaboration and this coordination. Because it does percolate out in different ways than if it comes from PRTPO directly. If they hear that there's actually appreciation for it. It means something.
And I have felt that since we've become a standalone RTPO and DOT is no longer our lead planning agency, I believe we have added a lot of value to our membership. I believe we pass a lot of information, and I'm just going to mention this one thing because I don't know that anyone else has noticed it. But if you noticed the last couple of meetings, we have not had a coordinator's report. If you know, Thera always would give us a coordinator's report at the end, and we could all read it at our leisure. We didn't discuss it here. And I remember at one meeting, Steve Gray saying that he really looked forward to that every month because he found great value in it. Well, that is one of the things that we have given up because we do not have time to do that with the other responsibilities. So those are just some of the little things that I believe we've added value, and now we can't provide it. So I believe this is important to us. So we will, yes, and Lindsay, to answer your question, I believe if you want more information, please talk to me, talk to Thera, and we can get some more details to give to your people who do the lobbying for your individual jurisdictions. Moving down our agenda, we have the biennial currency review. That was a riveting document. Thera, do you want to take that?
I'm glad you appreciated the creativity and fine authorship in there. This is some of the things on your plate are kind of bureaucratic things. And one of those things is every 2 years, you have to do a review of your regional transportation plan and let the state know if it's still current. And so this has been on the books since like 1992, but the state just started to enforce it 2 years ago. So this is your second one in 30 years. And so what you have before you, it's the same format as we used last time. We established 2 years ago sort of a two-part test. One is, does the RTP still meet the bare minimum letter and intent of the law? And then the second test is, does the RTP fulfill your needs as a board in directing your work program and in developing regional priorities and supporting your coordination efforts? So applying that test this year, never mind that we're already updating the RTP, but applying that test, what we find is that the RTP does still continue to meet the bare minimum letter of the law for RCW 4780 compliance, but in terms of its usefulness to you, while it has supported your work program development, looking ahead, again, we're sort of planning for, several years into the future, it can do better. It can do more for you. It can be more tailored to what your needs are and actually be a document that is integrated with the rest of your work and not just this appendage that sits out there and every 2 years we do another currency report and say, yep, did that. So that's what this is. This is coming to you for a first read. You can see how I've approached that, and certainly if you feel like I've mischaracterized anything or have any questions, I would want to answer those. Otherwise, we will bring it back to you. Just looking at how busy the agenda is going to be in February, I think that we will put it on, unless there's an opposition, we'll put it on just as a consent calendar thing, since it is kind of sort of one of those check the box functions that you have to do. So turn it to you for any questions or direction.
I would ask everyone to review it. This is the first reading, and we do like to give you 2 meetings, the second meeting before we approve anything. And I do appreciate the funding issue, you to take that up in 1 meeting. But if you have any questions, you want more details about that, please feel free to contact Thera, and she can answer those questions or make any updates before it goes on the consent calendar in February. And then moving on down our agenda, we have the RTPO's role in addressing tough topics. Did you want to take that, Sarah?
Yeah, that would be great. So this is, we're taking the RTP update in some bite-sized chunks, just to put the budget thing into context here. Our budget affords about 10 or 11 hours a month to do RTP stuff. So if it seems like it's coming to you in little small chunks, there's a reason for it, but that's okay because it works. So last month we started talking about what value PRTPO can contribute to regional transportation planning, both in terms of what the role is that PRTPO does in terms of convening and facilitating and coordinating, but also the kinds of questions and issues that you all raise here. And you know, I hope hopefully in the minutes I summarized and captured those okay. We're gonna just, again, we've got about 10 minutes today. What I wanted to do today was just to share with you a little bit, like building on this notion of information sharing and resource building, show you a little bit of what we've been working on, and then prepare you for a homework assignment that you're going to get. And the homework assignment will be, is drawn from your discussions basically since you became an independent, self-determined RTPO, the kinds of issues that you have developed basically every summer for the legislative folios. As a group, you all talk, you raise a bunch of issues and then you winnow them down and you come up with some priorities. And then the discussion in October. And so we've pulled from that to give you a homework assignment. But first, I just want to show you, so I included in your agenda packet just a screen print, a printout of something, and I wanted to show it to you in real time here. Hopefully you're seeing, oops, let me pull, I'm sorry, I should have had this up already, I'm sorry. Well, let me tell you what we're doing. We are developing a dashboard for you. So let's see, are you seeing a screen loading up? I'm not 100% sure what you all are seeing. Do you all now see my little cursor moving around? Okay, thanks. So we're creating a couple of different dashboard tools for you. This is what I included a printout of in the agenda packet. And we're trying to build a regional profile that that first of all shows the region as a whole, because most of our materials show each of the 4 counties, and then there'll be a sum at the bottom, but this is a region. And so this, what I'm showing you right here are some basic demographic trends. So population, regional, all 4 counties, the regional population from 1990 through 2020. You can get some race and ethnicity data. All of this comes from the census and the ACS, the American Communities Survey. Age distribution, all, some basic demographic things, so that we, if we had some different resources and structured this differently, you could sort of see how these demographics might change, pig and the python change over time. Households and housing units, is Ed still on? Percent of homes with broadband internet access for the region. And then as we go down, we've got also commute modes. This is, again, seems important to what you all do to have these basic basic context. This is a household travel characteristics, commute mode for the region as a whole. Where people are working. Are they working at home? Do they work in the city that they reside in? Do they work in the county that they reside in? Or do they work outside of the county that they reside in? Vehicles. We work on a lot of things besides cars, but at the end of the day, vehicles per household is worth knowing about, including where we don't have any vehicles. How many of our households have no vehicles at all? So these are definitely households that, alternatives to driving are important. Where people are working as a region, electric vehicle registrations as a region, and you can see just from 2010 to 2022, how these things have gone up over time. We've got incomplete data right now for 23. What you'll also find in here is household income, our regional, our per capita, and our mean as a region, as well as how does that compare to the state per capita and mean. The state, we can also provide median household income. We cannot provide that as the region. And finally, the other characteristic we have up here is poverty level data. And then what we thought would be important, and this is still a little bit working in progress, don't have all the details worked out, but so here's the region, but how do we break out per county? So we've built a tool, I've built a tool that allows you to also go in and look at it by county. So we can look at for Kitsap County, you can compare, maybe we look at Mason County instead, and then you'll see some, I'm guessing we'll see some shifts, some numbers shift here, so you can break it out by county. You can break it out by city. We can look at some of these same statistics by city. We still have some gaps in here that we're working on, but and we won't have all the data that we have for counties by cities because of the data source. The consultants who are doing this, the GIS team that's doing this, they also said, well, if we've got this data for county and we've got this data for cities, we can also create unincorporated data. So for our county partners who sometimes are looking for data outside of cities for unincorporated areas, again, some of that same data that we were looking at for the region as a whole, what we have available now for unincorporated areas. And then the last one I want to show, and this one is, we want to put like a little disclaimer up here, and probably for places like Forks, we want a disclaimer too, because what we deal with when we look at tribes, first of all, we don't have all the same data sets for the tribes, but also there's such tiny populations. Same thing with Forks, that the smaller the population that you are evaluating, the margin of error for the data sampling can be as high as the numbers themselves. And so we want to sort of put like a little disclaimer thing up here that says, before I look at this data, I realize that small area sampling is problematic. But similarly, we are trying to provide for each of the tribes in the region as well, the same basic population profile information, because we think that it helps you better understand some basic characteristics. It helps your staff have easier access to information. And then to the public, these are just some basic user stats or simple stats that general public may find as interesting as well. So this is one tool that we've been working on under the auspices of the Regional Transportation Plan and building a data platform for you. And then the other one that I want to share with you is also a PRTPO data portal and planning resources. That demographic piece will be housed in here under the demographics tab. We don't have it there yet. Right now, what we've got under that is, and it's slowly loading, it will be demographic information that you will be able to pull up depending upon, maybe we want to talk about, maybe you're interested in limited English proficiency. So you'll be able to pull that up and pull up a legend and zoom in and see what kind of characteristics might be associated with projects that you have in certain areas. This is still being developed. We need to get the layers to layer right, all of that, and you are very much limited by my lack of expertise. But the thinking is that we're going to give make it easy for our members to quickly access some of the basic information that they need for grants or, so for planning studies, things like that. We also will have in here all these other things. So you've seen the RTIP, so Ed's RTIP maps will be posted in here. Public transportation. This is kind of exciting for our non-transit partners because a lot of grants want to know what kind of transit services close by. And so what we've done is we've been able to pull in information, not just things like the park and ride facilities, what you see there, but they've also pulled in for us, the transit folks will know what I'm talking about, the GTFS data. We'll change the label on this before it goes live. But what that allows you to do is very quickly and easily go in and click on an area and go, oh, my project's on this road, and then see that, okay, yeah, it's in PRTPO. Also, that it's the Route 7 out, that for Poulsbo, it goes between Poulsbo, it connects from Port Townsend to Poulsbo, Port Ludlow, and the Tri-area. You can get all kinds of information. I think you can even use this to actually go to, to Jefferson Transit's site and look at that route information. And the opportunity that this provides, not just for you and your staff to access data, but also at some point just to be a useful tool for those strange members of the general public who happen to follow PRTPO. We could have information out there that's of value and use to them. So we've been working on that. You'll find also when this is all put together, like we've got our Human Services Transportation Plan in there. Streets and highways, we'll have more information on streets and highways. It's just the nature of it than we'll have for anything else. So I'm sharing all this with you just to let you know that there's a lot of this kind of stuff going on in the wings that is going to start coming to you, and I'm going to send you some test links. But the first thing that you're going to get from me is a link to a, oh, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry, I've got too many different things open right now. The first thing that you're going to get a link to is a link to a homework assignment. And so this afternoon, I'm going to send you a link to a SurveyMonkey poll. Please bear with SurveyMonkey. I apologize, but you're limited by my technical capabilities. And what we've done is we have gone through, I've gone through like your folios, your discussions, that discussion in October about priorities. And we've got 20 priorities that you all as a board have surfaced over the last few years. And what I'm asking you all to do is let us know, should we look at this topic closer as an RTP, as a regional transportation plan, area that we want to focus on closer? And what we'll ask everybody is, you agree that we should look at it closer? I don't care one way or the other, or no, don't really think that we need to look at it closer. And I know I've got 20 of these on here. SurveyMonkey says it'll take you 8 minutes to get through it. But for some of you who like to, if you give us feedback on those things that really resonate with you, that will be really, really helpful to us. And so we'll go through these, and through your input and what we'll do with the TAC in January, we'll narrow this down. We'll get us, are we working on all 20 of these as a part of this update? Are some of these more important to focus on than others as a part of this update? And are there any new topics that we should be looking at? And then we'll know over the next few months what to focus on more closely with you. So this is the homework assignment that I'm going to send you a link to first. And then I'm going to start sending you some other links to those other tools and ask you to try those out and beta test them and see what you think before we, go wild with the public on them. So I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry, I've rambled a bit here, but I just want you to know that there are a lot of things going on, but your input, even in these little small ways, is really helpful to us in knowing what to help focus your efforts on over these next, I'm going to say 6 months, as we get ready for something to present to the public as what we think the strategic opportunities are or the strategic issues are that we want to focus on. So thank you for your indulgence here. And unless there's anything specific, I'll turn it back to you, Beck.
No, that's fine. You're sending that poll to the TAC also?
I'm going to send it to the executive board first, and then it's going to be incorporated into a TAC exercise. I'd like the executive board to that way the TAC can respond. The TAC is going to have different perspectives than policymakers. So I'd really like to see where the policymakers line up on this, and then we'll all come together as staff, TAC and RTPO staff to next step.
Yes, thank you. And I do encourage all of our board members to complete the survey, because that will be the foundation for what is looked at in greater depth with the RTP update. Are there any questions or comments? Except I thought the demographic thing was going to be very useful for our organizations, especially after we get people used to using it. And moving down our agenda, we have a slate of officers for 2024 and a request for nominations. I and Randy are both terming out of our positions. We've each held, I've been chair for the last 2 terms, and Randy has been vice chair for the last 2 terms. And so we have a couple of board openings or executive committee officer openings. And our bylaws suggest that the chair come forward with some nominations. Randy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, before we start, I want to explain, it's not because of that I'm tired of this organization. When I stepped in because we were recreating a whole new system. And I stepped in as Beck's wingman. I come in when things are broken and when I'm really needed, if not needed, I move on. But I wanted to say the reason why I can move on is Beck did an incredible job. We started from scratch with absolutely nothing. And here we are with an organization that I don't feel I have to watch over. So that's why I'm able to go ahead and move on and do other things. But that would not be possible if it had not been for the excellence of Beck. And Beck, has been an honor to be your wingman through this whole process, to help watch over your back and make sure everything went through. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm very proud to have worked with you. You did a great job. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us as you move forward and on to greater things.
You're welcome. And I will say that Randy did cover my back a few times, and he did get to listen to me a few times. So I appreciate Randy a great deal also. So what I did is I felt it was important that we had continuity in our officers on our executive committee. The executive committee basically is the 3 officers, the chair, vice chair, secretary, and then our lead planning agency and our physical agent. And we basically just get together a couple weeks before the executive board meeting and just review what's going to be on the agenda and any pending actions. But so Lindsay Schwarm-Warren had been our secretary, and I invited him if he would consider to be the chair, and he did agree. And I think his arm is no longer swollen from me twisting it as much as I did, but he was willing to chair, and so we appreciate that a lot. So I will be bringing forward Lindsay's name as chair for the RTPO. And then it's kind of been our practice to have all of our counties represented, but we only have 3 members. And Kitsap County has been on the executive committee now for 6 years. And so it was kind of Kitsap County's term to step back off the executive committee. So I looked to Jefferson County for vice chair. And I was also looking for an elected. So I approached Ben Thomas to see if he would consider being vice chair. And Ben gave it some careful consideration and got back to me and said, yes, that it would be fine to put his name forward as vice chair. And then I looked to Mason County for an elected to serve as secretary. And Deidre Peterson, who has been the representative in the city of Shelton for several years, did not run for re-election this year. So then I turned to the ports, and Dick Taylor has told me no so many times I didn't call him, but I did call Ted Jackson from the Port of Allen and ask him if he would consider being secretary. And he was quite enthusiastic about being able to be on the executive committee and being engaged, further engaged. So those are the 3 names I will be bringing forward in February for your consideration. We will open it up for additional nominations now, if you would like, or also nominations in February before the final vote is taken. But I did invite everyone last meeting, if anyone had an interest, to please contact me, and I am here to say my phone did not ring. So I went out, as I do, and made some personal phone calls. So I'm quite proud to bring forward those 3 names. I will be doing that in February, and we will also be opening the slate up for additional nominations at that time. So I don't know if there's any additional comments or questions on that process. And the new officers take their seats directly after the February meeting. So are there any questions, concerns, Lindsay?
Well, Beck already asked me if I had a concern, and that's that I will not do as thorough a job as Beck has done as chair. So, you know, Beck has probably thoroughly canvassed everybody here except who she mentioned she's not. But if somebody's like dying to be chair of PRTPO, please don't hesitate to put your name forward. That said, I'm excited to serve as best I can if that's what happens in February. But if you're like, I'm ready to chair PRTPO and that's on my bucket list, please, there's no territoriality here. We're all in this for the same thing, which is to have this organization work really well. Thank you.
The other thing I'm going to say is we transitioned away from DOT as our lead planning agency. I think that became, was it 2019 that we completed that transition? And as I look at our current board, there are a few of us who were part of that whole thing. I'm looking at Wendy, I'm looking at David Fort, Dick Taylor was there. I think Paul Hampton was still around. I can't remember Brendan. But there's going to be a learning curve for the board, and there's going to be a learning curve for the executive committee. And so I really welcome the opportunity for new people to come in and give a fresh perspective to what the RPTO is doing and how it's functioning. So with that, we will move down to our next agenda item, which Sarah, I believe, is you, and you had some explanation in our packet about webinar logistics and the updates for 2024.
Yeah, and hopefully that memo is self-explanatory. Attached is your calendar for 2024. And then I thank you for your patience this past year as we tried to do the webinar calendaring, which has just been a nightmare for so many people. We're going to, this next year, you're going to get 6 calendar appointments in Outlook, and I can attach your agenda packets to them, and it will have a general public login link. And if you can't find your personal login link from a Zoom email, you can always use that one and come in through the side door, and Ed can slip you on into the executive board table. We've just got to find something that works better for you all, and gives us helps us be more nimble with that. So if you have any questions, let me know. Also, just to remind you that we will be looking for appointments. And so if you go back to your member organizations and just either revalidate, you will find an email from me shortly to your administrative leads, and I'll CC you all, looking just either to formal appointment or revalidate who's authorized to vote on behalf of your organization. So that's just our first of the year startup things. Wanted to update you on that.
Thank you. Ed, do we have any public viewing that would want to give public comment at this time?
Yeah, we have no public attendees, unfortunately. I would hope someday we have some.
Either in
or
person.
online.
Okay, or online. Mr. Taylor.
Just a question. Are we ever going to have face-to-face meetings again? I truly enjoyed doing those, and maybe we could do once a year or something, but these are so impersonal. You don't really get to know the other members that well until you can look them in the eye.
I agree with you, and that was a topic that we discussed at our last executive committee. And anyway, and yes, that is something that we want to consider and figure out how to make it work. The other thing we want to remember, and that will be important with budgeting, is the cost of doing in-person meetings. Lindsay?
Yeah, if I could respond to that, one idea that I would try to get going would be maybe the idea of a field trip to a project site or something that gives us more interaction time instead of just coming together and then having a formal meeting. So that's a thought, and that's something that I'd like to push for, pending Dara's capacity, of course.
Lindsay, see, this just tells me how far we've come. DOT, our June meeting used to always be a field trip, and we would go to one of the other jurisdictions, be it Mason County or Kitsap County or the city of Sequim, and tour their projects, what they were doing, and have lunch, and everybody got to spend some time together. But I agree, Dick. I've missed that a great deal. I've missed a great deal getting to know everyone, you know, more personally, because there's always chat time in front and chat time at the end. Ben?
Oh, I just encourage it to be on the bus route for everybody somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and make sure the Hood Canal Bridge is open. So, is there anything else, Wendy?
Oh, I just wanted to tag on to what Ben said, that it was always extra work for a transit agency to contribute that bus driver and that vehicle to the DOT to make those arrangements. But it was done out of tradition for years. And that's how the rotation happened too. It's not one transit agency got hit with those expenses from year to year.
And we did. One of the transit agencies, we all got on a bus and toured. So it was wonderful. Is there anything else for the good of the committee? Okay, seeing none, we will stand adjourned, and I hope everyone has a great holiday season, and we will see you all in February. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.